Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges, as he explores turning the page on his life and yours.
Welcome all to the next chapter with Charlie. It is so good to have you with us. Today's guest is author and emotional intelligence coach, Pamela Williams. I have never heard of an emotional intelligence coach, but I must say I am loving the concept. In her book, How Do I Find Love After Heartbreak, Pam isn't just addressing romantic wounds. She's diving deep into the mind-body-soul connection, revealing how unresolved emotions manifest themselves in physical pain throughout our lives. And these are some of the thoughts that will drive our conversation today. So let's bring on our special guest, Pamela Williams. It's such a treat to have you on the next chapter with Charlie.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Charlie. It's wonderful to be here.
Yeah, it will be great. After all of our listeners know that I have a conversation with my guest beforehand. And
cool.
And I got to tell you, Pamela and I had a wonderful conversation. If the podcast is a quarter as good as our conversation, we're going to have a great show. So I'm very much looking forward to it.
Me too. I'm really excited. It's always great when it flows.
Yeah, let's see how that goes.
Okay.
Before we get deep, and let's offer some clarity. What is an emotional intelligence coach?
Well, simply speaking, an emotional intelligence coach, or what I do, I help my clients recognize and release emotional baggage. You know, when we go through an experience that is traumatic to us, obviously it elicits an emotion. And oftentimes we may stuff the emotion or let it flash out in a way that's maladaptive. So what I do is I just help my clients identify what those wounds are, help them release it, and help bring clarity to their life so that they develop a self-care routine that works for them, that they can learn to manage their emotions and recognize when things come up, and more importantly, feel their emotions and release their emotions, because we're emotional beings that think. So emotions are part of everything that we do.
I've never heard that. I like that. We're emotional beings that think.
Yeah.
I like that.
Thank you.
I'm big into heart and head, and heart always wins over head with me, although head plays a role, but heart gets to be the guide.
Absolutely. Exactly. That's the concept right there.
What was that?
That's the concept right there. And in my work, it's aligning the head and the heart as one, because that's when you can really connect, when the head's not interfering with how you're feeling, you know?
And that's not easy for a lot of people to do.
No.
The heart is a difficult. I hate even calling it an organ because I don't know what it is, but it's an interesting entity to try to understand, and one must at some point learn to dismiss logic and judgment and the whole thinking part of the process, and move into the feeling, symbolic, conceptual, move into that realm of operating the brain.
Oh, I agree. I mean, it's funny because you hit on the point of not calling the heart an organ. I actually call the heart, it's the emotional processing center. It's where we process our emotions, you know? That's where, like, all our emotions are processed through the heart. Hence, when you hear a lead with love, that's why love is the emotion that trumps everything. Like if we can make decisions from that place of love, my gosh, not only will our lives be different, but the world would be so much different, you know? But oftentimes it's another like emotion that is fear And fear is natural. Like it helps us to determine if we're in a fretful situation or not. But when you're making decisions out of fear, it can only lead down a path that it would be more negative and self-fulfilling, like a selfish way of, or selfish purpose it would lead to. But when you make decisions out of love, it's more of a, how can I say? It's more of a viewpoint that is less selfish, obviously, but you're looking at the greater good. So not just what's good for you, what's good for the other person too, or people.
Well, we'll talk a lot more about fear, but in talking about fear, tell me it seems to me that the heart drives fear because it is an emotional response. However, the head, there's so much of the head that seems to attach itself to fear. It feels like my head loves fear and loves to try to resolve it, deal with it, run from it, hide from it. How do you see the relationship between the heart and the head regarding fear?
Well, to me, fear settles in the gut and the stomach.
Okay.
The gut and the stomach is the power center. That's where we process our power. And so in regards to the head, there's an alignment there because the amygdala on the left side of the brain, that's its sole function and purpose. Its sole function and purpose is to determine if we're safe. So whenever information comes in through our senses and hits the amygdala, it's asking the question, am I safe? Am I safe? So we do have a region in our brain that is geared towards fear. I call that the fear center, to be honest.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when there's a malfunction, right, when there's a disconnect, then it will cause a malfunction. And when I say disconnect, is when you're disconnected from people and other people's pain. When you're disconnected from people and other people's pain, then you as a person will just organize your thoughts and your external world around keeping yourself safe. So that's how you can then self-sabotage. So that's the relationship in your head. There definitely is a space that we hold there in the fear center that governs fear. But the thing is, fear is meant to be felt in the moment to determine if you are indeed safe or at risk. And that's the job of the right amygdala, where you process in the moment. You see what I'm saying? So
yes.
When you process in a moment, you can determine, okay, this happened to me before, and that what could have happened is I got run over by a car before. Let's say you come to a road, you're crossing a road, and you get afraid thinking about what happened. But then if you are online in a way where you're not stuck in the past or worried about the future, and you're in the moment, you can then look, you'll think clearly, and you'll look and see, okay, well, there's no car right now, so I'm okay. I'm not at risk of getting run over, and then you can safely cross the road. And so that's, I think, the biggest problem that we're facing now is that a lot of people are making decisions solely through their fear center, and they're not using their whole brain, which is determining, okay, am I safe when it asks that question? But a lot of people then look at threats as comparing. They're comparing themselves to someone else, and then they might see that as a threat because that person might have a better job, or they might have the relationship that another person's always wanted. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's where I come in as an emotional intelligence coach to help people decode and ascertain, okay, well, what is it you fear? Then we break it down from there.
Let me offer you a new word.
What's that?
It's a Greek word. It's Koine Greek that the New Testament is written in Koine Greek. And, you were talking about the heart being the gut, that place, that sort of down low stomach sort of area. The Greek word, it's called koilia, Koilia. koilia,
Koilia.
and that refers to the gut, the heart, the gut, and that's what it's a very Greek, comes from, it comes from ancient Greek, and I love that concept of having an actual place, that has a name.
Yes.
That has a place.
That has a place, that has a name, and that governs emotions, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah, it does. I have a question on emotional intelligence. And as I was looking it up and realizing what does an emotionally intelligent person, how do they differ from a person that's not emotionally intelligent? And one of the strongest that I read, for me, the result of effective emotional intelligence is the ability to regulate one's strongest feelings in a social setting.
Oh, yeah. So they don't lash out. Exactly. And I'll add to that too, being able to track thought before action. That is the essence of clarity. Because a lot of people, if you're emotionally intelligent, you'll have a thought that will come in and then you'll pause. You're not just going to, for example, you were offended by somebody's verbal interaction with you. If you're not emotionally intelligent and if you're not able to track thought before action, you might respond or react, by just hitting that person. But if you're emotionally intelligent, the way you will frame that would be like, okay, well, maybe this person's just having a bad day. They hurt my feelings. It wasn't the coolest thing to do, but I'm not going to just react because maybe they're having a bad day. You will just check your action and you won't feed off what somebody else has done. So it's very true. You're able to regulate your emotion as such, but it's a
reconstruction of process.
Yes. Yeah. Cognitive reframing. Exactly.
Oh, I love when I accidentally use the right words. I was going to say reframing. I said, no, let me call it reconstruction. But
we're in sync here, Charlie.
What's that?
We're in sync here.
Yeah. I'm not surprised. And another definition that I want to get to, so that helps me understand emotional intelligence, and that you are, may I say, in boiled down terms, you are helping people to regulate their emotions in social settings.
Yeah.
But it is more than that. It's about understanding. It begins by understanding your emotions. And so that means you do have an empathy. Is there not a big sense of empathy that is working along this?
Oh, for sure. Are you saying empathy with me or in people?
I would say both. I would say empathy for other people.
Oh yeah.
But it does help. It does help tremendously. I mean, it helps my raised. I wasn't in the Christian environment until I was 30 years old, but I was raised in a very conservative Christian environment for the first couple of years. I think I told you I went to the seminary with the redundant name Western Conservative Baptist. Like, what's it going to be? Western Liberal Baptist, But I had to. Oh, you went out a bit there. Reframe my predispositions about things.
I missed you a bit. It cut off a bit, Charlie.
Oh, did it? I said through seminary, through the conservative beginning, I was forced to reframe all of my theology because now I'm Episcopalian, and I would say my theology. We'll talk about theology later, but it's not liberal, but it is what you were talking about. My entire theology is based on love. I mean, everything is about love. It's just, if you're going to talk about divinity and the divine and God and source and whatever name you choose to call, it is all about love.
Oh, gosh, absolutely. I mean, it does sound cliche, but it really is true. Like, love is the emotion. If you lead with love, you'll be surprised how people respond to that. Because sometimes too, people are guarded and they may think that you're going to do something bad to them. But if you lead with love, that could be a smile. That could be just seeing someone some days asking how they're doing. You'd be surprised how they respond to that, you know, and you might not get it right every time because, there might be that person where you might be vulnerable and lead with love and they may not be receptive to that. But you can't let that influence you then in how you move through your life, because like we're talking about, love is so important. It really does move mountains. And even though the current zeitgeist is fraught with fear and negativity, you know, when something bad happens, you see how people rally around and they want to do the right thing. So that's why, to me, innate in all of us, there is light. But there is also, because this is the realm of duality, there is also a dark side too. So you just have to choose which one that you want to feed, right? And to me, I choose love. Like to you, you choose love. And I think being connected to Christ for me really helps with that decision. It really does. I mean, he, to me, embodies that solely. Love.
You know, when you said there's that we are light, you know, the Christ said, we are the light. We don't become the light. We don't make the light. This is part of our essence. But there is also, because, you know, I think both of us are rather Jungian, or at least we talk Jungian, and I do believe in the shadow and the darkness and that side. And you know, I think too many people are not conscious of their dark side, and that it doesn't have to be negative. It just is. It just is. This is his other side that I would be very incomplete without my dark side. I love my dark side.
Yes. It's helped you in life at some point, I'm pretty sure, you know. You know, like, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you, but I just was excited when you're saying that. But it's the truth. I mean, we all have a dark side, or a shadow side, I call it.
Yeah, that's what Jung calls it.
Oh, right. And it comprises of the parts of us that have helped us, especially when we were younger, to get out of a bad situation, or defense mechanisms, you know. So it is what makes us who we are. And I think ignoring that side of who we are allows it to show up more. But if you embrace your dark side, so if you have a propensity to be judgmental or criticize or be aggressive, knowing that about yourself is better than not, because then you can ultimately make changes so that that side doesn't show up, and so that you can feed your light side instead.
I read a weekly blog, and do you know what the title of one of my most popular blogs was?
What's that?
Making Friends with Your Demons.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's good.
But it is true. You must make friends with your demons. We have demons. And you know, some are of our own making and some of are not of our own making. There are just, you know, there are these thoughts and forces and, you know, that are going on. But it's to befriend them, to understand them, to work with them rather than always work in concert rather than always against them.
Absolutely. I mean, of course, because how can you or anybody, any of us, know ourselves completely if we don't understand that shadow side of us as well? But I think a lot of people, especially in my work, what I've discovered is there are a lot of people are ashamed of that side because they think that side is wrong, you know?
Right.
And just like you said earlier on, it's just like that side just is. That side has helped you get through a difficult or tumultuous period. It works in balance. So we can use the positive sides of the dark side. So if you know you're an aggressive person, then rather than being aggressive, you could be assertive, you know? Assertive, use that part of assertiveness to help you get things done. But knowing and accepting that shadow side will help anybody be able to take the good sides from them and dissolve the stuff that they don't need.
My theological mentor, who I've met and chatted for all of 4 minutes with. So, we don't have this ongoing relationship, but I read his books, listen to his lectures. I'm part of his group, Richard Rohr. And he writes a lot about the false self and the shadow side and the importance of understanding the shadow side and how that is, and that we must recognize it, deal with it, understand it, and accept it, and not be afraid of it.
Right, and not be afraid of it, exactly. But shame and guilt hold people from really accepting that side of them. That's the sad thing.
Yeah, and I heard an interesting. Tell me your take on this. I heard an interesting distinction between shame and guilt. And I think for you professional, you psychologist, this is old news, but for me it wasn't, is that shame is when you think there's something wrong with yourself, and guilt, something wrong with your internal self, who you are, and guilt is something wrong with an act you did.
Yeah. That's
and they're
correct.
Very different. Who you are versus what you did. You can always rehearse and change and reframe your guilt, but the reframing of shame is very difficult. That's a whole different story.
It is.
And I imagine that has a lot to do with emotional intelligence.
It does. It does. And being able to release perfection or perfectionism, because that's something that holds us back, and that's something that locks shame in. I think Brene Brown even did her work on perfectionism and shame and blaming. But in my line of work and just my experience in life and what I've been, my experiences that I've had, perfectionism has been something that has held shame. But the antidote to that is acknowledging that you're not perfect and that we do make mistakes. Because when you're trapped in a shame spiral, for me, that I've learned, if you can acknowledge that, look, I'm only human and I've made a mistake, it kind of releases that. And also talking to somebody that you can trust, that you can share this with. Because another component to shame is the belief that nobody else is experiencing this same thing, whatever it is you're shame. You know what I mean? And there is guaranteed somebody out there who has gone through the same thing or has felt the same way. And that's the thing. And then the compounding component of that is like the secrecy, right? So then you keep it a secret because you're thinking, I'm the only one that's going through this. But it's like, if you find someone you're comfortable enough to share your shame with, and it comes out, it loses its power. It gains
and there are very few people. There are very few people it is safe. I mean, it is even wise to share your shame.
Of course.
It's unwise. There are. One thing I heard just before we get into that, I heard Annie Lamott, and the author. She wrote in a book, and then I heard her in a lecture say, what we do is when we compare ourselves to someone else, and we think we're not perfect and another person is perfect, that's because we're comparing our very worst with their very best. And that they have a very worst as well, but we're not comparing. So the comparison is unfair. And I thought that was a brilliant observation.
That is an excellent observation. And I agree with that 110%. I mean, there's something like, I have over a decade of experience working as a social worker. And so something that I saw often, and obviously in my experience of working with clients, is that at the root cause of depression or depressive thoughts or feeling down, there's three components to that. Comparing, I call them the sins of the fear center for CINS. Comparing, then identifying with the negative thoughts, and then not accepting your circumstances or what is. But the lead off to that is comparing. And that is just an act that takes you down the wrong path. Because as much as you can look at someone's life and think that it's perfect, guaranteed they're going through struggles and they're going through things as well that you might not be able to see. And that's one of the problems with Instagram. Like, I'm not on there for that reason. The only thing that I'm on, because my clients would be like, well, why aren't you here and there? And I'm like, I was on all that stuff. And for my, I do this for a living, so I know what works for me. And for my emotional health, I prefer YouTube and LinkedIn. That's it. And that's because in this digital footprint, I have to be on something. But to me, those are a bit more bearable.
Right.
Comparing is rife. When I was on there, you would see, all these pictures and these and even for me, I was like, you know what? I feel like I'm part of this problem, because it's like I've posted a picture, and it's not to say that I'm lying in this moment. I'm not. It's the truth, but you don't know what's going on behind the scenes, right? You could see this picture of us or me or whatever, but you don't know, hey, we're just a normal family. And sometimes, we do have disagreements with things in terms of our marriage and things like that. And I just thought, it's such a recipe for disaster when you're constantly comparing to someone else, because guaranteed they have their shadows that they're working on too. And their life is not perfect.
Absolutely.
It's not.
You know what helps me in this, and I'll get a little bit theological.
I love it.
I mean, it helps me a lot. And that is from the Old Testament prophets of Jeremiah and Ezekiel. Mm-hmm. And that's where you get the New Testament, the new covenant promises of what's coming in the Christ. And Ezekiel, I believe it is. It may be, no, I think it's Jeremiah that's quoted in the letter to the Hebrews. Mm-hmm. But in the statement of the letter from Ezekiel, he writes that God forgives our sin, which that's the cross. That's not new news. Mm-hmm. But you know what is new news?
What's that?
And he remembers it no more.
Yes.
He remembers it. And so to know that whatever I'm ashamed of or ashamed about, God is not.
No.
Divinity is not. Divinity is already forgiven that, has mercy on that, has grace on that, and is willing to continue to work on new occasions, but not on old occasions, because it's been forgotten.
Exactly. and that's...
Isn't that beautiful?
It's magical and beautiful. And to me, with Jesus, I remember this was sometime a couple of years ago. I was struggling with letting go of an old hurt, actually. And I will talk to Jesus. I will just say out loud, and ask for something, and then I will receive a vision or something. And I said, how did you get over if somebody hurt or wronged you? And I saw an image of the Garden of Gethsemane when he was being arrested, and when Peter cut off the ear of the guard, right? And Jesus touched the ear and healed the ear straight away. And what came to me in that moment, what I saw was, oh my gosh, he just let go. He didn't hold grudges. He just understood. You just got to let something go. Because if you hold on to it, it's only gonna affect the individual. It's almost like emotional bondage is what I call it. And why it's important to forgive, because forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. And it could be something that will help the other person that's hurt you, but it's more so something that you give yourself because you're releasing yourself from emotional bondage of what happened, why it happened, and how it made you feel. You know, a lot of hurts that we hold on to.
Yeah.
Thank you. A lot of hurts that we hold on to are because of what was done to us and the anger we have towards that person that hurt us. But if we're able to accept the reality in the moment it happens, my gosh, it propels us through a state of, okay, I don't have that baggage. This is my reality. Now, let me formulate a plan so that I can work through this new reality, you know? But the Almighty is just a master of masters. So, of course, that isn't anything. He's never going to hold a grudge or hold on to anything because
no grudges.
He all understands.
No grudges.
You know? So
this sort of segues into a transition of where I want to change subjects a little bit. And, you know, you wrote your book about heartbreak. I think, and as I read in the introduction, I think one place to begin, because I'd like to talk about this and the full dimension of it, because I think you have a lot to say, is I think we need to redefine heartbreak because it encompasses so much more than just merely loss of a lover. Because we think of heartbreak as loss of a lover. That's I mean, you know, that's the first thing that comes to my mind, and my guess is our listeners, that's the first thing that's coming to their mind. Right. And it is absolutely true. There is heartbreak over loss of a lover, but you define heartbreak much more broadly, don't you?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And even in talks about it, I defined it in my conclusion in my book as to what it means for me. But you're right. When you hear heartbreak, you think of romantic heartbreak. But no, heartbreak to me is a loss of anything that causes you pain in your heart. So it could be, yes, a breakup of a relationship. It could be the death of a loved one. It could be the loss of a job, the loss of your house. Something that's caused trauma, that's caused the loss then for you, that breaks your heart, that makes you feel grief. That to
heartbreak is, but they're typically larger losses, are they? They're not, you know, losing my keys. You know, they're losing something that I've hoped for, that that have created stability for me, that I've built my life around, my whole reality is based on that.
But I'll push back on that a little bit because
please,
it depends on the individual. So we'll take the example of your keys. Now, yes, keys are physical, but that key maybe could hold nostalgia to somebody, right?
Oh,
that
okay.
Key,
now, yeah.
You know,
okay.
It could have belonged to maybe a loved one who perished, or some other type of nostalgia that they lost that key and it caused them harm.
Yeah, that's different than what. Yeah.
Right.
I completely.
You see what I'm saying? So yes, the component of heartbreak is more of a grief that a person's going through that has ultimately hurt their heart. And there's different ways that can happen. Of course, people, jobs, you know, moving. It depends on the individual. But yeah.
But it does. It is. It's strong. It seems to me to be strongly tied with something we care a lot about.
Yeah, it does.
And a lot. That's there's something we care about that is meaningful to us. And when that is broken, it's almost like my identity is broken. Who I am no longer who I am, and I must deal with that. Would you include that as heartbreak?
I would say so, yeah. I would say that, and that's why you have masters and Jesus was one. He didn't have attachments really. You know, he traveled from place to place because he understood too, when you're attached to certain things, it will bring pain. But obviously, he was able to form attachments with people. But there was also an understanding of impermanence, that nothing lasts forever. And when you have that understanding, too, you're not so entrenched in attachment that when you don't have this thing, you're heartbroken. Because yes, then your identity is wrapped up in it. And the thing is, you never want your identity to be wrapped up in a role or an object, because your power is only tied to that role or that object. You lose that, you lose your power. So it's not, your identity should be more of what you want to be and who you want to be, as opposed to who you are. Because when you don't have that, then you lose yourself. So that's why, like I say, like in a marriage, I guess, thank goodness I haven't gone through a divorce, nor would I want to. But obviously, we're human. We've all had points of contention in our marriage or relationships. But you can see, if your identity has just been about your marriage and then you go through a divorce, gosh, you could see how devastating that would be. And obviously, the loss of this life that you had hoped and dreamed of and you were building together, and then that ends. And then if you have the components with the kids and finances and your home, that obviously adds a different part to it. But yeah.
You're describing, are you familiar with the Japanese concept of wabi-sabi?
Yeah, oh yeah. I know about wabi-sabi. But this is another part you don't know about me. I used to make, and it's an abeyance, I'll just say that because people might go and check and look. I have a company called Noveled Leather. And the concept of it is making handbags with leather that is imperfect. Imperfections are beautiful. So, I mean, I've been on TV for it and stuff like that. But yeah. It was a client who told me that. Said, have you heard of wabi-sabi? And at that time I said, no, I hadn't. She goes, my gosh, your bags are that. They show the beauty and imperfection. So I actually would use the scars of the leather and incorporate my own to show the beauty of imperfection. And so, yeah, that is another component to my work.
You know, the three parts of wabi-sabi that I love is imperfect, incomplete, and impermanent. Mm-hmm. It is just, it's just a beautiful concept. I have written about it, read about it, and, you know, I sort of embrace it. You know, kintsugi, the putting together of pottery.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know that was a term for it, but yes, I see what you're saying. Yes,
with silver and gold.
Yes.
Silver and gold, and that's the imperfect, and that's actually considered more perfect than the perfect.
Yeah.
You know, that imperfection is more considered more beautiful than the unbroken piece.
Yeah, it's so true because. And that's the thing, like it's on my website, there's a part for Noveled Leather and in my giving back section, and you'll see, because I would give back to charity through Noveled Leather and stuff, but that was something often people would say to me, like, my gosh, your bags are so beautiful. And I would just work with the imperfections and accentuate them even. But like there was just like a natural kind of symmetry and order to them that just made it flow. And it would come out. So then it wouldn't look odd. It would look right, even though there's like a scar or scars on there. There's a flow that brings it out with the colors and stuff that make it look beautiful.
I love it. I have a bag. I have a work bag that, you know, it's a Toomey, you know, that you put computers in, and but it's a shoulder strap bar. It's not a backpack. It's a shoulder strap bag, and it's brown. It's beige, you know, and it was, you know, the leather was perfect when I bought it. Well, I had it for 10 years and took it on international travel, and that thing is so beat up. I mean, it is just ridiculously, you know, a mess. And I thought one time, you know, I need to take it in and have this have this repaired.
Yeah.
And I took it into a luggage shop, and they said, "Are you crazy? Why would you do that? This is perfect. This bag is beautiful."
Wow,
And
that's awesome.
so I have my own wabi-sabi. I never even looked at it as a wabi-sabi bag.
Yeah.
But it is a wabi-sabi bag.
It tells a story. And that would be like, that was one of the taglines, of my bags. Like every scar tells a story, or every wound, or every bit of impermanence. And that bag for you has been on your travels. And my gosh, if that bag could talk, what would it say? But it says,
"Oh my God, you don't want to know." It knows too much.
But see, that's the beauty of like the imperfections of that bag. It's speaking through that, right?
Yes, from my imperfections.
Yeah.
One of the things we were talking about heartbreak, and about how to find love after heartbreak, and you've written about, and I think I'm quoting you, so you can please elaborate. It's that we need to discover how to overcome the resistance to forgive people who are not willing to apologize and make things right.
Oh gosh.
We think people are willing to apologize and make things right, but then the ones that are not, we just want to say, "Screw you." I don't want any part of it. And yet that damages you, does it not?
Absolutely. Yeah, that fits into the component of what we were talking about with forgiveness. And what I learned was that, it's actually a gift that a person gives themselves. Because when you don't forgive, or you're waiting for that apology from a person that has wronged you, what you're doing is drinking poison and thinking that the other person is the recipient, and they're not. It's true,
That's cool.
It's the truth. And so that, for me, if you're waiting around for that apology to come from somebody who's hurt you, you might get it, but you might not. And in my case, I didn't get it. So I had to figure out, because at first, so for me, I'm speaking from experience. What I do, I'm speaking from something that I've learned or from experience. And for me, I had to figure out that I had to keep moving forward, and I had to accept what happened, because that allowed me to let go and ultimately forgive. Because if I was waiting around for Warren, it wasn't going to happen. But it held me back. The waiting, or me expecting, or me just not knowing that I had to let go. I had to accept this is my reality. I'm a single mom, and I'm going through judicial abuse. I'm alone. I'm a foreigner. How am I going to get through it? My son needs his needs, and I'm working. And I managed to knuckle down and do that, and not only build a house, but get out of there as well, out of a dangerous situation. And, as we talked about earlier today, to see, I just can't express the amount of pride I have to see my son about to graduate a month from today with honors, and going to college, and he's been accepted to the honors program there too. You know what I mean? It's been a long journey, but my gosh, to get to this point is amazing. And that in itself is the power of letting go. Because I would still be stuck if I was waiting for an apology, right? Or holding on to anger and hurt.
You know what I was thinking of, and it's on this topic, but it's a little different. But it really is something that's impacting me at the moment.
What's that?
And that's this person that let me get that. I want to give and they won't make things right. It's about being right. And, I try to make a habit out of love and make love my inspiration. So for me to love people I know, people I'm familiar with, especially, you get people that are marginalized, disenfranchised. Those are easy to love. But you know what's not easy for me to love?
What's that?
Is people that disagree with me.
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, not just on. I'm thinking I'm thinking political.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking that one side of the political arena.
Yeah.
I so stand with him, but I think they're too far to their standards. And I think I am right until I understand they think as strongly as I think I'm right, they think they're right.
Yeah.
And there is no right, is there? There are better, but there are better, and there's more progressive ways. Love finds a way to integrate, to work together, to find common denominators, how we can do this. But without that, but I am interested in loving those that I disagree with. And I'm really getting there. I've gone through this whole progression of understanding what the childhood is like of people on the far right and what the childhood is like on the people on the far left. And it just when you think about their childhoods, it just explains the difference, a radical difference philosophically. That it is a historical thing. It is, it's cultural and historical. And that has helped me. What are your thoughts on that? I know that's off the wall.
No, you're fine. My thoughts, how I've been able to reconcile what's happening and with people. When you look at the sort of people that are attracted to, far right or far left movement kind of thing, it's people who have a deep dissatisfaction with life. They want personal development and they want to belong to something bigger than themselves. Now, that deep dissatisfaction with life is caused from some type of grievance that they have or an adverse traumatic experience that they went through. And because of that, with their yearning for personal development, so they're wanting to get ahead, it may not be in the most positive way, but that they're wanting to get ahead, they want to fit in somewhere. So rather than plugging into Christ or whoever that all may be for them, they're seeking that in a group, right? That's what helps me with understanding that, to be more, I guess, tolerant of people who have these extreme views, because I know it's coming from a wound. It's coming from a wound. It's not. And once they realize that themselves, they might be able to get help for that. I mean, there are just some people who, no matter what, I call them the bombers. No matter what, their job in society is to insert themselves into upper echelons or different parts of society, and they just blow stuff up. Those are the people that they bring lessons, actually. And we've all experienced somebody like that in our life who's brought us something deep that's made us really question life and think about where we want to go and who we are. And then there's the people who are lost. And they might be on their way heading towards the bombers, but they've been through something and they're trying to find their way. They're literally lost. And then there's people who have been lost and they found their way, and the people of light who are trying to say, hey, come this way. We can help you. So, I mean, my take on the current zeitgeist and, the climate politically and with people who disagree, I know it's coming from a wound. So, yeah, it's hard when you have someone who's maybe in your face saying certain things, but it's then to remember that this person has a grievance. Like attracts like. So people who've gained their power from causing pain and dominating other people's status and things, they're coming from a space of wound as well. So they're attracting these kinds of people, you know? So remembering that may help you to be a little bit more.
That's one of, and I said I identified the childhood beliefs of left and right.
Yeah.
That is my childhood belief of the left. That is not my childhood belief of the right.
Grievance, right.
The right, you know what, to me, the right is all about protection. And I'm not talking about the poor middle right, but your MAGA, your MAGA right.
Yeah,
it's about protecting.
Protecting power.
Well, it looks that way to some, but to them, it's not protecting power. It's just protecting what I have. I have a good life, and I just want to protect my good life, and I don't want any interruptions to my good life, and I think that is a big driver. But
I think so too.
Okay, so we're getting near the end of time, but we have to. Oh my goodness, how far are we? Where are we here?
50 minutes. 51.
10
wow,
minutes. 10 minutes left. I want to talk about core woundedness, and that's a big part of what you deal with is core woundedness, and that comes to heartbreak. I have limited myself to think of core woundedness as childhood. That 0 to 8-year-old stuff that happens. But you have enlightened me in saying core woundedness happens throughout your life. Like your core woundedness happened in your 20s, right?
Yeah. I would say my teenage years, so probably like 15. Yeah, 15. I had an older brother who committed suicide. So that was the jump point for me, where that wasn't anything that I was obviously expecting. And that shifted my perspective of the world. I call it an adverse traumatic experience, but yeah, I don't believe it's just limited to your childhood. I mean, you could get to college or you could be an adult and go through an assault, a burglary, something that can happen to you that makes you feel trauma and the emotions that are generated from that shifts your perspective of the world. All of us can point to an event of a before and then what you were like after. And to me, it changed my view of the world in terms of like bad things can happen, like waiting for that shoe to drop, like and being blindsided because I just was never expecting anything like that. And I felt powerless, that powerlessness of not doing anything or not being able to do anything.
So how do you resolve that?
You have to go back to that place. Well, firstly, it's with somebody that you can trust, right? So either a licensed therapist or coach, somebody who is versed in being able, or even a good friend, somebody that you can openly talk to about how you're feeling. And it involves not just checking in with yourself, but it's just a series of questions that you're going to ask yourself. You have to go back to what it was that happened that made you feel however it is you felt. So that could be abuse. It could be criticism. It could be rejection. It could be powerlessness. It could be feeling unloved. It could be abandoned, feeling abandoned.
It could be shame.
It could be shame. Whatever it is for you, that moment in time where you felt rejected, because that rejection will then produce the shame, right? And you then have to release. And you release it through words, through writing, but through acknowledging is the key. You have to release through acknowledging what happened and how it made you feel. And it sounds so simple, but it really is that. And knowing that your triggers, you'll be triggered, it will come up again. So then you have to do the process all over again. It's not just like, depends on how embedded your wound is. It will come up again, but you have to keep working at it. What it was that happened and how it made you feel. Sorry.
Right. You know, I am so fortunate. I have a friend that we developed a friendship in 1987.
Oh, wow.
And
I
we've,
was 8.
what's that?
I was 8.
I I thought you were going to say I wasn't born.
No, I came around in 79. So I was just.
I was, let's see, how old would I have been? 37.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
So there's a few years difference here.
You.
Yeah. And this friend, we've always been very good friends and very, very open, very, very vulnerable with one another. But in the last couple of years, we have gotten incalculably, another word, we've gotten very, very vulnerable, and where I can tell this man anything, Pamela, anything. I don't care what it is. It's my deepest, darkest shadow side, my deepest, darkest, whatever I'm most ashamed of or don't want to admit, or whatever I'm sad about, or whatever I'm feeling. And I am, and he handles this with such wonder. He handles this not only with acceptance and non-judgment. It is almost sort of a zen, sort of just there. You're there. You're just talking to me. We're here. He doesn't make a big, oh, that's okay. I'm with you. Don't worry. I've got your back. He doesn't say any of those things.
He's a good listener, isn't he?
Oh, he's a tremendous listener. Yeah. Tremendous listener. But he doesn't come back and say those things. You would think that they would be saying, oh, I love you. You don't have to worry. He doesn't say that, but it's just obvious. It's just obvious. And so to have a friend like that, I'm nearer. I'm a 3/4 of a century, and it's taken this long to find that kind of friend, and it is incredibly powerful.
Oh gosh, that's absolutely. I mean, that's firstly, you're blessed to be in that position, right? Because that's the key, to have somebody in your life that you can just be that comfortable and vulnerable and be yourself, that you can just share whatever it is you need to share to release the emotion and the baggage. And
it's not a constant barrage of that. It's not like every conversation. It's like once a month. Maybe something comes up, and when something comes up, I can be real. Yeah. I don't have to couch it. I don't have to say, oh, there's an issue I'm dealing with that I'd rather not talk about. I just say, it's never that. Here's the issue.
Right.
It's beautiful.
That's absolutely beautiful. Yeah.
Well, Pamela Williams, you are the best. You're one of my favorites already. Aww. And I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed this conversation so much, and the flow, and we get deep, and I love that. That's like my soul. That's my essence too. I love to get deep and to help people. That's the thing.
In the links, I want everybody to know I have a link to your book on Amazon, and I have a link to your podcast, to your website.
Thank you. That's
and
very
so
kind.
So people can get a hold of you there, and I hope people do.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. So I also want to thank everybody for tuning in to the next chapter with Charlie. And until next, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. Bye for now.